They say a single piece of evidence can crush an empire. Tonight, that prophecy lands on Kirk Frost like a thunderbolt. After years of whispers, betrayals, and late-night cover-ups, Jasmine has returned, this time not with rumors, but with proof. Cold, merciless proof. Receipts that do not lie, do not fade, and do not leave a single escape route. What Jasmine is holding in her hands is not just gossip, it is dynamite. Hidden transactions, encrypted text chains, private payments, evidence of a double life that even Kirk's most loyal defenders never imagined. The man who once built his brand as a devoted husband and sharp businessman is about to face the kind of exposure that no PR statement can bury. The fallout begins instantly. Screens light up across social media as hashtags like #KirkExposed and #ReceiptGate surge into global trends. This is bigger than any reality show drama, one viral tweet screams. Another user posts, "I defended him for years. I feel betrayed." Instagram Reels flood in, dissecting every screenshot Jasmine releases, while TikTok creators turn the unfolding chaos into minute-by-minute breakdowns. For years, Kirk and Rashida were the power couple who turned every scandal into free publicity. They built a music empire, cashed endorsement checks, and transformed reality TV storms into bigger contracts. Kirk seemed untouchable, a man who could stumble and still come out shining. But behind the curated family photos and polished business deals, the cracks were widening. Rumors of secret late-night meetings and mysterious cash flows never really went away. Kirk laughed them off, confident he could outsmart every accusation, just as he had before. But Jasmine was watching. And Jasmine was done. The woman once branded as the villain, mocked on talk shows and dragged across comment sections, was quietly building her case. She saved everything, messages that stretched across months, photos, and payment confirmations that could not be denied. Every humiliation she endured became fuel for the day she would strike back. And then it happens. Jasmine posts the first drop, a neatly organized digital folder. Inside, screenshots, bank statements, voice notes. The evidence unfolds like a thriller. Viewers scroll in disbelief as timelines overlap perfectly, proving clandestine meetings and hidden deals. A TikTok influencer gasps live on camera, "This is not rumor, this is receipts with timestamps." He cannot talk his way out of this. Kirk's empire begins to crumble in real time. Endorsement partners go silent. Business associates untag him from collaborative posts. Fans flood his accounts, demanding answers. "We believed in you," one longtime supporter writes. "You build your fortune on family values. Now everything feels like a lie." The betrayal cuts deeper than any previous scandal because this time, it is backed by ironclad evidence. And as the digital storm rages, one truth becomes unavoidable: there is no path back to the carefully crafted image Kirk Frost once sold. The mask has slipped, and the world is not just watching, they are screen recording, archiving, and amplifying every shocking revelation. This is no longer reality television. This is reality, unfiltered, and it is merciless. It began like a quiet rumble in the distance, conversations between Kirk and a trusted business associate that no one was ever supposed to hear. They talked about offshore accounts, untraceable payouts, and money laundering schemes that made past cheating scandals look like child's play. Then came the photographs. Grainy yet unmistakable images of Kirk slipping into late-night meetings with strangers Rashida had never heard of, inside high-end lounges and hidden offices he never once mentioned. Every snapshot was a loaded weapon. And just when it seemed the trail could not get darker, the bank records appeared. Wire transfers from shell companies, hush payments to people who had signed secrecy agreements, and receipts for luxury gifts purchased with business funds. This was no longer about infidelity. This was career-ending, reputation-destroying, law-breaking material. If these receipts ever reached the public, Kirk would not just lose Rashida, he could lose everything. For weeks Jasmine held that mountain of evidence like a live grenade. Part of her burned for revenge after years of being dismissed, humiliated, and branded as the villain. Another part ached for justice, for herself, for Rashida, and for every fan who had been fed a glossy lie. The decision weighed on her, until fate handed her the perfect stage. Love and Hip Hop Atlanta announced a reunion special, and in a shocking twist, producers invited Jasmine back after 2 seasons. They expected a few sharp words for ratings. They had no idea they were setting the scene for one of reality television's most explosive on-air exposures. The reunion was already charged when the cameras began rolling. Rashida spoke openly about healing and rebuilding. Kirk, with his usual calm smile, offered public apologies and painted himself as a man transformed. The audience, craving redemption, leaned into the story. And then the atmosphere shifted. Jasmine entered, calm and almost icy, a silent storm in motion. In her hand was a single manila envelope. Before we get started, she said, slicing through the small talk like a blade, I think everyone, especially Rashida, deserves to see the truth. The silence was immediate and heavy. Kirk's confident grin collapsed into a flicker of panic. He knew that tone. He had spent years dreading it. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice cracking ever so slightly. Jasmine raised the envelope higher. This, she said, is everything you have been hiding. All the lies. All the money. All the proof that your so-called perfect image is built on corruption. Gasps rippled through the studio audience. Even Rashida's eyes filled with confusion and fear. With deliberate steps, Jasmine placed the envelope before Mona, the host. Inside lay printed screenshots, photocopied bank statements, and a USB drive packed with digital evidence. Mona flipped through the documents, her eyes widening with every page. Jasmine, she whispered, this is serious. Jasmine stood unshaken. Every text. Every transfer. Every hidden deal. Kirk has been hiding money, falsifying ventures, and using his company to cover up crimes you do not even want to imagine. The cameras zeroed in on Kirk. Beads of sweat gathered on his forehead as he forced a shaky laugh. This is ridiculous. She is trying to ruin me. Jasmine's reply cut through him like a blade. Ruin you? No, Kirk. You did that to yourself. The audience erupted. Cast members leaned toward one another, whispering in disbelief. Some clutched their mouths. Others stared at Rashida, bracing for her response. Mona's voice trembled as she turned more pages. If this is legitimate, she said, it is not just a scandal. It is a potential criminal investigation. Jasmine crossed her arms and delivered the final blow. Exactly. And that is why I held on to it. Kirk has spent years walking around like he is untouchable while lying to every single person here, especially Rashida. The world deserves to know. Kirk's mask shattered. Half of that stuff is fake, he muttered, but the fight was already gone from his voice. Jasmine pounced. Then explain the fake companies. Explain the secret payments. Explain the missing money from accounts your own wife has never seen. For the first time, Kirk had no words. No clever spin. No rehearsed excuse. Just silence, and the cold reality of evidence that spoke louder than any denial. Finally, Rashida turned to him. Her voice was soft but carried an ache that silenced the room. Is it true? She asked. Did you do all of this? Kirk lowered his gaze, lips parting without a sound. I can explain, he stammered. Rashida stood, shaking her head. I do not want explanations. I want the truth. In that moment, she already knew the answer. The studio felt frozen in time. Cameras zoomed in on every stunned expression. The audience barely breathed. Kirk sat motionless, his carefully built empire collapsing in real time. This was no longer a marriage unraveling. This was betrayal weaponized, a scandal so deep that even his fortune and fame could not buy a way out. And as the lights burned hotter and the evidence lay exposed on the table, millions of viewers felt the same chilling certainty. They were witnessing the exact second an empire fell. Jasmine stood motionless, arms folded like steel, her calmness louder than any shout. The truth she had carried for years now glared under the studio lights, no longer hidden in encrypted messages or locked accounts. Rashida could only stare at the papers spread across the table. Each page felt like a blade, every transaction a fresh wound, every screenshot a reminder that every promise Kirk had made about "no more lies" was nothing but smoke. The millions watching from their phones and living rooms held their breath as the perfect picture of loyalty and forgiveness collapsed live on air. These were not rumors. These were receipts that screamed fraud, theft, and calculated corruption. Rashida's chest tightened as the weight of it all pressed down. She had rebuilt her life on Kirk's assurances that the past was behind them. Now those words lay shattered. Jasmine finally broke the heavy silence. Rashida, she said softly but firmly, I did not do this to humiliate you. I did it because you deserve to know who you have really been married to. Rashida blinked hard, her voice a whisper that quivered with both fury and heartbreak. All these years, and you were still lying, babe. The cameras zoomed in as Kirk finally found his voice, trembling and thin. It is not what you think. Those transactions, they are complicated. Business is complicated. You know how this industry works. Complicated? Rashida's voice rose, sharp enough to slice through the silence. You were hiding money. You were lying to investors. You were funneling money into accounts I never even knew existed. That is not complicated, Kirk. That is calculated. A murmur of agreement surged through the crowd, their gasps and side conversations captured by dozens of audience phones. Clips of Rashida's words shot across Twitter in seconds, racking up millions of views under hashtags like #CalculatedNotComplicated and #RashidaDeservesBetter. Even Mona, the unshakable host, was fighting to keep control of the set. Kirk, she said carefully, if these documents are authentic, this is beyond scandal. This is potential legal jeopardy. Kirk buried his face in his hands, his once famous composure gone. This is all out of context, he muttered, voice cracking. It is not what it looks like. Jasmine stepped forward like a prosecutor delivering the final charge. Then tell everyone why you sent $50,000 to an offshore account under a fake company. Tell them why you were paying hush money to silence people. Tell them why you created a shell business under your cousin's name. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for a miracle excuse. Kirk opened his mouth, then closed it again. Nothing. No clever comeback. Just the sound of his empire collapsing. This is not about me anymore, Rashida said, her voice trembling yet unbreakable. This is about what you have done, and about how you have humiliated me again. She stood slowly, every movement deliberate, and walked toward Jasmine. For the first time in years, the two women faced each other without screaming or chaos. It was a silent recognition that they had both been deceived, both manipulated by the same man. Thank you, Rashida said softly. Jasmine nodded, eyes steady. You deserved better. The energy in the room shifted so dramatically that even the cameras seemed to pause. The audience sensed it. This was not just reality TV, this was a woman reclaiming her power in real time. Twitter exploded with comments like, "This is history. Rashida is done playing the loyal wife, and this is how you stand up for yourself on live TV." As the reunion wrapped for the night, chaos followed Kirk off stage like a curse he could not outrun. His phone buzzed non-stop, calls from frantic lawyers, furious business partners, and nervous network executives. Word spread that an internal investigation might already be underway. Sponsors were threatening to pull out. One furious associate demanded an emergency meeting, livid over leaked wire transfers and shell company revelations. Screenshots of Jasmine's documents began circulating online within hours, dissected by armchair detectives and finance bloggers alike. Back at home, Rashida sat alone on the edge of her bed, staring at the glow of the city lights outside. The life she had built, every endorsement and family brand, now trembled on the edge of ruin. Her phone buzzed again, a message from her manager, "We need to talk." This could affect every brand partnership. She closed her eyes and let out a long, exhausted sigh. Of course it could. Kirk's lies were no longer private sins. They were ticking time bombs inside every contract they had ever signed. Hours later, the bedroom door opened. Kirk stepped in, shoulders slumped, looking nothing like the man who once bragged he could survive any scandal. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Rashida did not turn. "Talk about what? More lies?" His voice cracked as he pleaded, "Please. I need you to hear me out." Finally she turned, her eyes sharp and unyielding. "Why?" she asked. "So you can rewrite the story again? So you can buy more time while the truth burns everything we built?" Kirk froze, caught between confession and silence. No cameras rolled now. No producers hovered. Just the two of them, a marriage reduced to ash by choices he could never take back. And somewhere out in the world, millions of viewers replayed the reunion's final moments, tweeting, posting, and commenting with one shared thought: they had just witnessed the live, irreversible collapse of Kirk Frost's empire. "So you can feed me another excuse?" Rashida's voice cracked like a whip through the silence. "Tell me it is not what it looks like? Because, Kirk, it is exactly what it looks like. It is betrayal. Again. Only this time it is worse. It is business." Kirk tried to steady his voice. "I had to make moves. I had to protect us." "Protect us?" Rashida's bitter laugh sliced the air. "No, you are protecting yourself. You hid money from me, from investors, from everyone. You lied about our finances. You lied about who you are. And now look where we are." He reached for her hand, but she pulled back as if burned. "I made mistakes," he whispered. "But I can fix this." "No. You cannot," she said coldly. "You cannot fix this, because this is not a mistake. This is who you are." Her words hit harder than any accusation she had ever uttered. For the first time, Kirk's face collapsed into raw defeat. He finally understood there would be no comeback. The days that followed were a public demolition. Media outlets devoured Jasmine's evidence. Headlines screamed IRS probes Kirk Frost, fraud allegations explode, empire in freefall. Investors pulled out overnight. One of Kirk's biggest endorsement deals evaporated in less than 24 hours. Social feeds turned into a round-the-clock countdown of his unraveling. Meanwhile, Jasmine's carefully catalogued files were no longer just online buzz. They were in the hands of lawyers, Rashida's lawyers. Her legal team launched a relentless audit of every company bearing their names. Contracts that once bore Kirk and Rashida were being quietly redrafted. His name was being erased, brand by brand, deal by deal. At home, the silence was deafening. Rashida sat in the living room, still and deliberate, weighing a decision that felt both inevitable and shattering. Part of her clung to the family memories, the milestones, the music, the empire they had once dreamed into reality. But a stronger, steadier part knew staying would mean compromising everything she had built. By the end of the week, her mind was set. She called her lawyer. The divorce paperwork would begin. It would be messy. It would be public. And it would be permanent. Outside their home, Kirk's world continued to implode. Every hour brought a fresh headline, another subpoena, another partnership gone. Banks demanded emergency meetings. The IRS confirmed a formal inquiry. Former allies refused to take his calls. Paparazzi camped outside his studio. The man who once strutted through scandals now scrambled for hiding places. For Rashida, the silence inside the house carried more weight than any argument. She had asked Kirk to leave until the legal dust settled, but deep down she knew nothing would settle. Not anymore. He was not merely a husband who cheated. He was a liar, a manipulator, and now possibly a criminal whose actions had endangered every contract and every brand she had spent years cultivating. Every day, she met with lawyers, accountants, and brand managers, combing through the wreckage of their shared finances. Each spreadsheet revealed another shock: hidden accounts, unauthorized withdrawals, secret partnerships that defied explanation. The man she had trusted with her life's work had built an entire shadow empire. One afternoon, a single entry on a balance sheet froze her breath. A wire transfer of $250,000 to a company she had never heard of. The recipient's name leapt off the page. Jasmine. Her attorney looked up. "Do you know this person?" Rashida nodded slowly. "I know exactly who she is." In an instant, the betrayal deepened. Kirk had not merely cheated. He had funneled business money, their money, to sustain the very affair that destroyed them. It was theft disguised as love. That night, Rashida met her closest confidants, Yandy and Carly, for a quiet dinner far from the cameras. "Girl, you look exhausted," Yandy said, concern etched across her face. "I feel exhausted," Rashida admitted. "Every day I uncover something worse than the day before." Carly leaned closer, voice low but steady. "You are really going through with it, aren't you? The divorce." Rashida looked down at her glass, the city lights reflecting in its surface